Chapter 24, Post-Edsa to the Present of 1986 to 2010. The President from the Post-Edsa to the Present: Corazon Aquino, Fidel V. Marcos, Joseph Estrada, and Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. Post-Edsa Microeconomic History of the Philippines covers the period of 1986 to the present time, and it takes from the claimed People Power Revolution and the EDSA Revolution of 1986, named after Epifano de los Santos Avenue in Manila, that brought democracy and development potential back to the country that was once on perils of the martial law era. The People of Power Revolution, also known as an EDSA Revolution or the February Revolution, was a series of popular demonstrations in the Philippines, mostly in Metro Manila, from February 22 to 25 in 1986. There was a sustained campaign of civil resistance against regime violence and electoral fraud. From these months and even years of economic and financial collapse towards the end of martial law era came revolution, reform, the sustenance spearhead by the Aquino, Ramos, Estrada, and Arroyo administrations that saw the Philippines get back on track, and even through some of the wildest financial and political crises, such as the succeeding EDSA Revolution, the Asian financial crisis, and the most recent bubble burst, among others. It was the first time since World War II when the people of Philippines suffered harsh jackboot expression and wanton plunder. President Ferdinand Marcos, at the end of his term in 1972, and fearing a lost power and influence, declared nationwide martial law and abolished the Congress vowed to continue in office. The sovereign rights of the Filipino under the Constitution protecting their lives, liberty, and property were swept away, and Marcos declared himself an absolute ruler with legislative power to rule by decree. Tyranny had arrived. Thousands of opposition leaders, party members, journalists, and outspoken critics of the eruption of the Marcos provision years in office were rounded up and executed or jailed. Others fled abroad, and many young delicious and freedom-loving youth fled to the mountains and forests. There they formed a resistance movement called the New People Army, based on communist ideology, and continue as a force to the day. Many innocent young people were summarily executed. Revolution, liberal ideas, and reform guided the country towards robust growth, and crucial policies were conceptualized, developed, and enacted by the presidents and the advisors who supported them. A reform movement is a type of social movement that aims to bring a social or political closer to the community ideal. A reform movement is distinguished from the radical social movements, such as revolutionary movements, which reject those old ideas, and the present in the ideas are often grounded in liberalism, although they may be rooted in socialist, specifically social democratic or religious concept. So let's talk about Aquino presidency. President Aquino, though vested with ultimate power, had no desire on becoming a president. After weeks of tension following the disputed outcome of the snap election, disgruntled and reformist military office, led by the defense minister Juan Ponce Enrile and General Fidel V. Ramos, surprised the entire nation and the whole world when they announced their defection from President Marcos and their strong belief that Aquino was the real winner in the presidential election on February 22, 1986. The Reform Armed Forces movement was founded on July 23, 1982. By a group of junior military officers who were disgruntled by the patronage, politics, and corruption in the armed forces of the Philippines. Its stated goal was to reform the service, foster nationalism and patriotism, and fight against corruption and criminal activities, as well as tackle the problem of favoritism, incompetence, and corruption in senior leadership. Upon the urging and encouragement of the activist Cardinal Archbishop of Manila, Jameson, millions of Filipinos trooped to Camp Aguinaldo along Epifanio de los Santos Avenue, or shall we call EDSA, where Enrile and Ramos have been holding operations to give their moral support and prayers for the reformist soldiers. The first half of Aquino government was precarious. There were several coup attempts by the rump of high-ranking military officers loyal to President Marcos, but this attempt failed to get popular support. The rest of Cory Aquino's term was focused on turning the economy around the improving the peace and order situation. So let's talk about the Ramos presidency. The Philippines then was experiencing widespread blackouts due to the huge demand for electricity and antiquity of power plants. The abolition of the Department of Energy and discontinuation of the Bataan nuclear power plant during the Aquino administration. During his State of the Nation address of July 27, 1992, he requested that the Congress enact a law that would create an energy department that would plan manage the Philippine energy demands. Congress not created an energy department but gave him special emergency power to resolve the power crisis. Using the power given to him, Ramos issued license to Independent Power Procedures (IPP) the construct power plants within 24 months. Ramos issued comply contracts that granted the government would buy whatever powers the IPPs proceeded. Another the contract in US dollars to entire investment in power plants. This became a problem during the East Asian financial crisis was the demand for electricity and constructed of the Philippines. The Philippine peso lost half of its value. An energy crisis is any significant bottleneck in the supply of energy resources to an economy. In literature, It often refers to one of the energy resources used at a certain time and place, in particular those that supply nation electricity grids of those used as a fuel in vehicles. The country was considered risky by investors due to the previous coup attempts by military adventurers led by Gregorio Honasan, and experienced blackouts at an almost daily basis lasting 4 to 12 hours during the attempt of President Aquino. The low supply of power and perceived instability had previously held back investment and modernization in the country. Under Ramos, the Philippines was pioneer in the build, operate, transfer (BOT), or shall we call BOOT, a team where private investors and invited the building certain government project, tollways, power plant, railways, or etc. Make money by charging users and transfer operation to the movement after a set amount of time. Power and industry. Low supplier power creates a more attractive industry and increased profit potential, as buyers are not constrained by supplier. High supplier power creates a less attractive industry and decreased profit potential, as buyer rely more heavily on supplier.